What up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mike Lenoci Show. We are post-draft here, and we are in the midst of the NBA playoffs and NHL playoffs, may I say. May I bring up the NHL playoffs? I rarely watch hockey. I don't even think I've watched hockey for years. I believe I haven't really been invested in hockey since the 90s. Hockey is not a popular thing growing up in South Florida. It was in the 90s for a small period of time, but I've never really got invested. And then I found myself watching TNT, watching the Panthers Bruins game. I was very aware that it was Game 7. Obviously, I'm aware of what's going on in hockey. I know what round they're in. And I said, you know what? There's no basketball right now. Let me watch Game 7. I know that hockey can be exciting, and I found myself very invested emotionally, and they went up. The Panthers went up 2-0 against the Bruins, and what I didn't know is the Bruins had the President's Cup, and the record, I think it was the most wins by a hockey franchise. They had 65 wins, which is incredible, and I didn't even know that. And they were up 3-1. I was aware they were up 3-1, and they gave up this. They choked. Talk about a team that choked, which is kind of fitting for Panther fans. If you are a big hockey fan, the Panthers were the President's Cup, I believe, last year. They were the number 1 seed, and they got bounced out in the first round. So for the Panthers to win that game, it was something fun to jump on. I jumped on the bandwagon, and I will probably watch another hockey game in the series. I'll probably kind of watch on my phone and see where it's at, and if it's at like 3-2. After Game 5, I'll kind of keep a closer eye, assuming they don't get swept by Toronto. So that was kind of a little surprise for anyone out there who's a fan of hockey and your team, a Florida Panther fan. I don't know how many Miami Dolphin fans are Florida Panther fans out there, but that was exciting to watch. But really, the story is the Miami Heat still, and, excited to watch the Heat. They're up 1-0, and I don't know why they were underdogs in this series, especially the way Butler has been playing. We have to keep an eye on his injury, hope he plays for Game 2. But if he doesn't, like what I've been hearing, not a big deal. Not a big deal because we got the split. And you have to look at these series as it's strategic the way you play people. For instance, last night, Joel Embiid didn't play for the 76ers. And I think going in, they're like, listen, we'll sit him for 1 game. Hopefully we have him for Game 2, and it's a must-win. We get the split. We go back to Philly, and that's the goal. You want to get the split as a away team. The fact that they won Game 1 in Boston, it's kind of understood that Joel Embiid is definitely not going to play Game 2 because they're okay with the split and having him even have more rest and be healthy for later in the series. You got to assume this series is going to go 6-7 games, so that's an advantage for Philly. Now the Heat, if Butler is not at least 70%, you might think they might sit him. He might not play because there's no rush, because you want to go back to Miami at least 1-1, and you could take the series to 2-1, potentially a 3-1 series lead, and that's the goal. So that's what I'm learning, and I think that makes more sense rather than rushing him back for Game 2. He re-injures something and then can't play later in the series. Why not take a little bit of caution here and try to squeeze it out another win? Unlikely without Butler, but go back to Miami 1-1 is a lot better than going back to Miami 1-1 and not having Butler for the home games. But really this week I wanted to get into the Miami Dolphins draft recap. Not much of a draft. We didn't have a lot of draft capital, but I will go ahead and make a prediction that this will be the fewest amount of picks that Mike McDaniel will ever have to have going forward. I think last year we had maybe 4 as well, but he hasn't had a first-round pick in his career yet, and next year he has one. And I hope that week 7 or 8 or whatever the trade deadline is this year, I think it gets pushed back. I hope that maybe we're in a situation where we see ourselves not needing that first round pick again. Wouldn't that be a win? I think we will keep it because we haven't had one for 2 years. But imagine if we're 6-0 or 5-1 and we're sitting there going, hey, let's just go all in like we have been. Obviously, we're all in right now with this team and, try to beef up this roster to secure a Super Bowl, which just seems like who knows what's going to happen in the AFC. There is just so much talent at the quarterback position. You can't put Tua in the top 10, but you could say that we have a very talented team across the board. We would be one of the more talented teams on paper in the AFC. The biggest question mark, being Tua. So going into the draft, I thought my concerns were obviously who's our starting tight end. We have Durham Smythe. Is that going to be it? Fine. Obviously, we're going to add other tight ends. Who knows in free agency, but that's what we were going into the draft. I thought maybe that would be our first pick in the second round, or potentially a right tackle. What's the best tackle you're going to have? We saw a lot of tackles go off the board in the first round. So realistically, I don't know. We're going to even have a top, 8, 7 tackle in the draft. Do you want to waste that on your second round pick? A lot of teams, what you hear, don't necessarily draft for need because then you get in trouble. A lot of teams will have a draft board and it's a player ranking. Let's say they have the top 100 players, regardless of position, regardless of need. So their top player in the draft is the defensive end from Alabama. Maybe they even will list the quarterbacks, right? Even Anthony Richardson is on there. And as the draft goes on, they eliminate those players and they see what they have. I know that when we play Madden or something like that, I'll have a draft board. I get involved in it like that. And I'll have a draft board, coming off of a cold. I'll have a draft board and maybe I have a guy ranked higher, but I need a certain player and I kind of ignore my draft ranking to go for the player that is of need. I don't think that these scouts and Greer and McDaniel are really doing that. I think they stick to their guns and they draft who they have ranked the highest. And the reason that person is ranked the highest is because they think that is the most important person for the locker room, and it's another player that adds depth to a position, which is clearly what happened with our first pick in the second round with Cam Smith. I don't think it's a need at all. I think I think cornerback is always a need, especially in this day and age of football. But I would argue that there was more of a need at safety with Eric Rowe not returning, I believe I saw. Okay, so all you have is Javon Holland and Brandon Jones, which is fine, but there could be depth there. You have our linebacker core. I know we added the middle linebacker. Forgive me for not knowing his name off the top of my head. But I feel like our inside linebacker room is a little weaker. I like Jerome Baker. I don't see them being superstars or Pro Bowl caliber players. Obviously, with Chubb and Jalen Phillips, that's exciting. We have some good outside stuff, but we lost Van Ginkel. So there's depth we lost there. There's some fan favorite players we lost there. I just felt like there would have been. I understand we drafted. Again, blanking on his name. We did draft a linebacker last year, but he didn't see the field once, did he? I feel like he struggled in preseason. I just felt like the inside linebacker would have been a position of need. Clearly not. Okay, maybe they feel comfortable with that room. I would have thought that safety would have been ahead of cornerback, and defensive line I think is fine. You have your defensive tackles with Sealer and Christian Wilkins, and then we still have Agba. Maybe he comes back and plays better. It was kind of a little disappointing even when he was on the field last year. That's fine. Wasn't really looking for a defensive end or a defensive tackle. But really the biggest concern I think we all had across the fan base is the O-line. We obviously have Armstead. We obviously have Robert Hunt, who's turned into a great draft pick, but we clearly have missed on 3 other linemen with Austin Jackson, Liam Neekum, and Solomon Kindley, who didn't even make the team last year. So there's 3 drafted linemen that really haven't panned out, and 2 of them, one was a first-round pick, and one was a 5th rounder, but Liam was, a second-round pick. So you got to give Liam another chance, right? He's going into his 3rd year, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then you have Austin going into his 4th year, which I would be surprised if he made the team. But so now you got them competing for a guard position. Connor Williams was a great center. From what I'm understanding is he's going to be moving over to right guard, and Robert Hunt will be moving to right tackle. And they have a center they signed. He was on the Jets, and that's our new center. And then you have your left guard position is a competition between Liam, Austin, and whoever else might be on the roster when the time comes. That is just some information I've received, that we should expect Robert Hunt to be the right tackle this year. And Connor Williams will move to right guard. And that would make sense to the signing. Now, we'll get back to our later pick, which is a tackle, which I don't expect to make the team because he was a 7th-round pick. But Cam Smith is the best player available on the draft board for the Miami Dolphins, and you can never have too many people at cornerback position, like they said in the press conference. Greer and Mike McDaniel explained, they're like, listen, we had a lot of injuries at that position last year, and you can never have too many. And they explained, I thought this was very interesting, in Fangio's defense, over 65% of the snaps, there are at least 4 to 5 cornerbacks on the field. So that is some interesting information that you would want to know. Hearing that makes you understand, why not add a top cornerback from South Carolina, which has produced some great cornerbacks in the history, like Stephon Gilmore is from there, and other great people. Seems like he's had some, injury history, concussion. Could we use more concussion guys? Sure. But he is he's a big corner. What do we got with his size here? He's ranked high. He's 6 feet tall, 22 years old, 188 pounds. He's a big guy. That's a big cornerback. That's that's someone you like to have. He could go on he could play nickel. I assume he's going to compete for Nick Needham's position. Nick Needham's going to be coming back. He's our starting nickel. You have Ramsey and Howard on the outside, and then you have Cam Smith now, who you hope is a starting 4th cornerback. At the very least, he's out there. You want him on the field. That would be a very good sign, which also gives us insurance for the future. If we have to, let's play a game and say, hey, Cam Smith turns out to be a stud, we can move on from Ramsey or Howard with their big contracts to secure, hypothetically, Tua needs to sign because he has a great year, or you got to think Jalen Phillips or Waddle or Javon Holland. You got 3 studs that we've drafted in the last couple of years that are going to want big contracts if they continue to play good. So you got to think that is a good position that they need to add depth and for the future. So I don't hate it so much learning about Fangio's defense and knowing that there's over 60% of the plays, there's 5 cornerbacks on the field. That makes a lot of sense. So you go with it. But still, the tight end position, you're like, I thought maybe we get another weapon. Too many weapons. There's never too many weapons. But a friend did bring up to me that, listen, we had Gesicki at tight end last year. Again, I apologize for the coughing. We had Gesicki at the tight end position last year. I understand he was an amazing tight end receiving tight end. We didn't use him that much. In a Mike McDaniel offense, he didn't get used that much at all. Regardless of his blocking ability, he had one of his worst statistical years. Okay? So how important is the tight end position for us? It's maybe not something that is important to Mike McDaniel's offense, and he's more looking for someone who can block, which, right now we have a guy that we picked up in the 6th round who is converting from wide receiver to tight end. They even have him listed as a tight end on the Miami Dolphins website already, which is funny because he's a wide receiver, but I guess it's been did they talk about this with him? They're like, hey, if you're there, we're going to draft you and we want you as a tight end. I wonder if that was a conversation they had, but I saw in the press conference they had openly talked about how Elijah Higgins was drafted specifically to be a tight end for the Miami Dolphins. So the best case scenario, that's a 6th round pick. If that's the case, if he came out of the draft saying he was going to be a tight end, would he have gone higher? I don't know. Let's look at him. He's 22, 6'3", 228 pounds. He's a big guy. That's a big guy. That's what a tight end is. So, just some notes on him. He started 1 game as a true freshman, no receptions in 12 appearances. As a sophomore season, he had 15 receptions, 176 yards in 6 games. In 2021, he started 9 of 10 games, had 45 for 500 yards, 11.1 and 4 touchdowns, 11.1 yards per reception. The following year, he led the Cardinals. He played for Stanford. He led the Cardinals with 59 receptions, 700 yards. That's an interesting number. Scored twice, 12 starts, received honorable mentions, all Pac-12 conference platitudes. Why was he such a late round pick, though? But I don't know. A big guy. So, I mean, wouldn't that be exciting if he comes out and has a great spring and a great training camp, great preseason? Well, if he's on the field as a starting rookie, that will be great. That will be great value for a 6th round pick. As if he's our starting tight end, think about how great that could be. You could only hope, because I don't know if last year's draft was such a hit. And then our second pick in the 3rd round, Devin. Is it Achane? Is it Devin Achane? Well, he's a running back. I believe they said the fastest running back in the draft. He ran the highest, the best 40. Speed is something that Mike McDaniel loves. Interesting because I thought that we wouldn't go with a running back. I thought that we agreed to run it back with the running back room because we re-signed everyone. We got Wilson back. We brought Mostert back. We brought them all back. We brought, Gaskin is back and Ahmed. So you got those 4, and then you assume this guy's the 5th. I don't think they keep 5 on the roster. 1 will get a practice squad signed, right? You can only hope that this guy blows everyone's mind, and I think you want him to be the starter. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't it be great if he won the starting job? And then you just had these vets behind him that kind of came in different packages. That would be unbelievable. I wonder what his blocking ability is. I can't assume it's great because he's more of a speed guy. So I think he's probably someone who catches the ball out of the backfield. Looking at some of the things, he's a kick returner too. They have him as they used him as a kick returner and a special teams player in college a lot. So that could be something. But I believe we signed the old Jets wide receiver specifically to do punt returns and kick returns. I would believe that this is just another guy for depth. He led 7 yards per carry. That's pretty cool. 900 yards rushing. 9 TDs, a receiving TD, 1 touchdown from kick returns. He had a foot injury, though. He led the Texas A&M rushing. He also is a track star. So, 21 years old, 5'9", 185, pretty average size running back, young. He's young. You like young players? Means you have them for, what is a prime, running back? You only kind of get them until they're 28 and then they start to fall off. So that's the value of him could be very good. I think the last running back we took was Doak right? What was his name? I don't know if he'll be on the team next year, but I the thing with the draft is you just never know. I think you know what you're getting in the top 15, 20, but when it comes to a draft like this, nobody knows. We have no idea, and ultimately they interview the guys, they watch film, but you don't know what's going to really happen or what kind of competitiveness these guys have, and we don't know how they're going to turn out. I think you learn quickly. You learn quickly, I think, at camp. I think one time I heard it was Jimmy Johnson or Dave Weinstein was saying on one of these shows, he was like, how someone was interviewing how quickly, it might have been Colin Cowherd. He was like, how quickly do you know when your draft pick is special? And Weinstein was said, oh, we kind of figure it out by preseason. We know what the guy's going to be, what kind of guy we're working with. And, I heard rumors about Tua years ago that like, hey, everybody works with these guys and they know what they have. So I will say this. Xavier Howard was a second-round pick. So Cam Smith, same thing. So you never know what you're going to get with that. And there's a lot of running backs that have been drafted in the second and third rounds. So taking a running back in the third round, it very easily could be potential to be a star, but we won't really know. And you can hype it up, and you'll see a bunch of other Dolphin channels and Twitter hype up that's annoying. They always hype it up. Everyone's like, well, look, they bring up all these stats and these videos from these guys that they drafted, but really we don't know, and we won't know until preseason. And I think we kind of knew that last year. Last year we had Channing Tindall, right? We drafted him in the third round out of Georgia, and it seemed like you were hearing stuff about preseason and minicamp that he wasn't doing that well. And I don't believe he saw the field much this season. As a third-round pick, to have Channing Tindall not really do anything, that's a little disappointing of a pick. You would like your third-round pick, even if he starts the later half of the season, even if he plays in games, you would like to see some sparks of some good plays and being like, oh, okay, he made some mistakes here and there. Mistakes are normal, but to not be on the field and make some huge plays, that's a little disappointing for a third-round pick. I think you would want to see that. I think the biggest disappointment was the wide receiver in the fourth round, Azuka Nama, Eric. I mean, he didn't see the field at all. That's a big disappointment. For a fourth round pick, you would hope that he couldn't find the field. I remember Wes Welker in press conferences would be like, we just feel like with the packages we are putting out there, we can't really trust him to. Like Wes Welker would kind of spit the truth a little too much. They would say they don't trust him to even be out there. Although he seemed like he was great in the preseason with Skylar Thompson. And Skylar showed some beautiful things in the preseason. Remember that? Remember Skylar? We're like, okay, here we go. And then we watched some of the worst play we've ever seen from him when he would play. I thought he overachieved for a seventh round pick, and I think he's earned his right to compete for a position on the roster again. But now with Tua and Mike White and Skylar, I think knowing the history of Tua, I think all three will be on the roster again, and Skylar's earned that, I think. But he's clearly, I don't think, showed anything that could make him a starter in this league. I think he's a backup, and wishing him to develop into something better is crazy thing, because he is a 4-year college player. He's as old as Tua. And Cameron Good, I don't remember hearing anything, really, to be honest, about him last year. I feel like that's a 7th-round pick. Did he even see the field? I don't know. So we've only had 4 picks the last 2 seasons. What do you realistically want out of these 4 picks? You would hope that Skylar Thompson, you hope he develops into a solid backup for years to come. Great value. You would like Channing Tindall to at least be a special teams player. If Channing Tindall plays as good as what Van Ginkel was, that would be great value. And then sad that Van Ginkel, we didn't keep him. I really enjoyed him. I thought he was a great player. You hope that Cam Smith and our running back, you got to hope that you get one of these You want 2 of these 8 draft picks to become starters. That would be great. But time will tell. We will see, and that's all we can really, that's all you can really hope for. Let me know what you guys think. Like and comment, and like the video, comment. Let me know what you think. I got more videos coming up. I'm going to have some people come on the show. We'll do some interviews. I'll do some episodes about the Heat, obviously, because that's exciting. And maybe I'll even talk about some hockey. If there are some hockey fans out there, let me know. But mostly, we're going to keep it to basketball, I think, over the next 2 months, because not much news in football since the draft is done. I think maybe you'll see some signings here and there. Everybody evaluates the team, but a lot of questions going into this year with how competitive our division is. A little scary, I would say, as a Dolphin fan, but all we can do is get ready for minicamp, and I hope you guys like it. Again, let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, and thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next week.